Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this Policy and Resources Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 9th of October. We will start, and the first item on the agenda is apologies. And I'll go to the group leaders, Councillor Coyle. Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 9th.
Councillor Stephen McCann.
Okay, I have an apology. We'll start. And Thomas O'Reilly. The first, I have an apology from Councillor Garvin McPhillips. Go to the group. Is there any other apologies anybody knows of? I know certainly Councillor Hawkes is online. Okay. And Councillor Mark Ovens is online as well. Apology from Councillor. Okay, we'll move on to sign the minutes and confidential minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th of September. That has already been done. And item number 3 is declarations of interest. Is there any? Councillor Mark Ovens is online as well. Okay, Councillor Ovens.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just to declare an interest on elements of Paper A of Appendix 1 of Paper A under 4.1. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Irvine.
Slightly similar as well, Chairman. It's under procurement. It's one of the tenders is co-funded by EHA, and I'm the board member, so I have to declare an interest just in that one.
Okay, thank you.
Of Appendix 1 of Paper A under 4.1.
Okay. Okay. We will move on. Reports for decision, and item number 4.1 is to consider report on consultations, and we're going over to Louise.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So
thank you.
This is paper 4.1. There are 2 items for decision and 3 items for information. On the first item, which is the rather substantial paper, which is our draft response to the Executive's Programme for Government at Appendix 1, and to note that this committee has the council powers to approve this paper, so it can be submitted for decision and 3 items for information. You can't hear me very well. On the first item, which is the rather substantial paper, which is our draft response to the Executive's Programme for Government. Okay, so just to make a few comments on the draft response on the Programme for Government. So we're mainly supportive, proposing that we're mainly supportive of the Programme for Government, but we wish to highlight the historical underinvestment in the district, as well as reiterating the specific priorities the Council identified in the motion in February 2024. We also point to the DfE's Sub-Regional Economic Plan, which was published on the 1st of October, which notably identified the district as one of 3 which needed focused support. So that paper is council identified. Members are asked to approve that paper. The second item for decision is our response to the Executive Office's EQIA spending plans. Notably, that's at Appendix 2, and the key point there, it highlights the decline in funding for good relations. That paper is council identified. And the final 3 items are for information. The second, so the recommendation is that the council approves the draft response submitted in relation to the Executive's Programme for Government and the Executive Office's spending plans for 2024-25, which is a quality impact assessment. And at 9.2, it's recommended the council notes the additional information presented on consultations submitted to the last P&R committee, consultations referred to other committees as detailed in paragraph 3.2, and consultations included for noting paragraph 3.3, which is the quality impact assessment.
Mr. Green.
And at 9.2, it's recommended the council notes
just on that consultation on the Programme for Government, very interesting, very well done by the council. So congratulations on that. I was looking at 2 points.
Joint government initiative, north and south, gateway to the northwest, and all that.
But they're very, very developed links. We have links, strong links, and we need to reference those links in the document. And just in 1.2, I think we should see that new mental health unit to be funded. I would like that, if at all possible, to be reworded as new acute mental health unit in Omagh to be funded. And earlier today, I had a conversation with Unison's Andy McCain about all of this, and he reminded me that this was approved when Michael McGimpsey was a minister. That's when it was formally approved. So it's the promised and funded. It needs to be the promised acute mental health unit to now be funded is really what we're saying, I think. So those are my suggestions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Louise, for your report, and thanks to your team as well for providing these draft consultation responses. I think they are very comprehensive. I think that they reflect very well the discussions that we have had in the council over the years, and also our priorities. So I support the document fully. I also want to support Councillor Michael Duff in his comments regarding cross-border cooperation and partnership, and also the promised acute mental health unit based at Omagh Hospital. The other thing that I feel, we've had many discussions about this in the chamber, and I feel maybe we could expand a little bit in the document about GP services. And I know in the document, Chair, that we highlight the need to prioritise rural GP services, making sure that they are supported to ensure equitable access to adequate healthcare services with Fermanagh and Omagh District. Chair, I feel we need to add that there is primary care services are in crisis at the moment throughout the north, but particularly in rural areas like our district council area. And we have seen evidence of this owing to the high number of practices forced to return their contracts and difficulties in recruiting new GPs to the area. And I feel that we should put in a line to say that there needs to be an urgent review of primary care services, how it is funded and delivered, because it does represent the bedrock of all health services, and is essential to ensure that those health inequalities that Councillor Green referred to are addressed. So thank you for that. If Councillor Michael Duff is seconding the noting of the correspondence, I will support it. Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're happy enough to second it with them amendments. Councillor Green, are you happy enough to include them in your proposal? Okay, thank you. Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to support everything, especially what Barry's just proposed around the acute mental health services and building in Omagh and cross-border elements of everything. But I just wanted to comment on the inclusion of ending violence against women and girls, because that strategic framework is included in it, and we put a good bit in as well. But I was just wondering if there was a report done last year called "It's Just What Happens," where 150 or 160 girls were interviewed, and the fact that anything from catcalling, touching to name calling, and then more physical abuse within the home, within their communities, within school, and as they go into work, is just often seen as normal, because we put up with it from when we're small girls, and you go into adulthood and it's just normal and acceptable that men carry on like this. A lot of men carry on like this. And so I just think that normalisation of
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Chair. Just want to reference 13.5 on the consultation, which is improving our transport infrastructure. And I suppose this is an important one, I think, not least because we were excluded from the All-Ireland Rail Review. So I welcome the comments in the consultation around that it was a missed opportunity and that it'll have a detrimental impact to investment, economic opportunity, access and services, things like that. But when that announcement was made, and we were all very disappointed, we were told at that stage, nearly as a consolation, that we would be given some sort of a regional transport plan for the area. And I think that's something that we need to really push on and campaign for, because it could be like everything else. If we don't talk about it, it could slip off the agenda. So I think maybe the inclusion of a line just referencing the fact that Fermanagh needs and deserves a regional transport plan to improve rural transport needs within the district. I think that would be a good enough inclusion. All right, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Green and Councillor McElduff, you's happy that them last 2 points are included? Okay, thank you. Everybody agreed? Move on. Item 4.2 is to consider report on financial matters, and it's over to Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, thank you, and good evening, members. So the financial matters report this month, members, looks at the management accounts for a 5-month period to August 24, consideration of the estimates process for 2025-26, and to note the conclusion of the audit of the statement of accounts for the year end 31st of March 2024. So just firstly, in relation to the management accounts, members, so the 5-month period ended 31st of March 2024 is attached at Appendix 1, and it compares the actual expenditure for the period against the budget profile for the same period. The net operating expenditure, members, for the period amounted to £16,390,953 out of a budget profiled for the period of £17,093,254. Total costs to be financed amounted to £17,221,267 against a profile budget of £17,926,234. In relation to movements for variations over the last couple of months, so I can confirm that the variations up to period 5 are broadly in line with those up to period 4. And there will be a more detailed subject review of individual budget lines as we reach the 6-month management accounts stage. There are 2 areas, members, community and wellbeing, where the variance has been slightly different from previous months. And really on a positive note again, there has been additional income received within the leisure centres, particularly over the period of August, and I suppose we would relate that to the poor weather and the increased number of visitors to the leisure centres. And in community services then was additional work done really in August in relation to the summer schemes, and that budget's actually under review. Members, just noting as well, just under 2.1.2, that the management accounts include separately the investment income earned in the period of 431,000, and this was referred to in last month's Policy and Resources Committee, which is directly attributable to earmarked reserves, and hopefully the transparency is more clear. It has been there in each month, but it's maybe more and more clear now on the Appendix 1, hopefully, than previous months. But again, if there are any queries around the transparency of that, if you just let me know, either at this meeting or separately. Under 2.2 then, members, is the estimates process for 25-26. So the first elements of that section really details the legislation and the regulations behind the rate setting process. So just really want to focus on section 2.2.6, members, which refers to the elected member workshops, and that is supported by proposed terms of reference for the estimates workshops at Appendix 2. We have made no changes to that appendix or to those terms of reference, and they were the ones that were used in 24-25. Members, just the proposal is 2 estimates workshops, virtual meetings. The first one is proposed for Monday, the 11th of November 2024 at 7 p.m. The second for Monday, the 20th of January 2025 at 7 p.m. And the proposed date at present for the special council meeting to strike a rate and to agree estimates of income and expenditure is Thursday, the 6th of February 2025 at 7 p.m. Just under noting then, members, and you'll be familiar with at this stage, we have alerted everyone by email, that is all councillors and the independent members of the audit panel, of the conclusion of the audit of the statement of accounts. There's a link within the paper. They're on the council website, and all notifications have been done both to the Northern Ireland Audit Office and the Department for Communities in relation to the publication of the accounts. So, Chair, subject to any queries, the recommendations at 9.1 is that the council approves the management accounts for the period ended 31st of August and approves the estimates process for 25-26, including the terms of reference for the estimates workshops, and that the council notes the conclusion of the audit of the statement of accounts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Mahan.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Catherine, and the team again for the report and detailed as usual. Just, Chair, on relation to the rate setting process, which we're talking about here, and the estimates workshops, and I agree with what's proposed there, and I suppose I could say I propose the report I set out there just when I'm on here. I think over a few previous years, there has been opportunities have arisen at the rate setting meeting where individuals or parties have proposed a rate, whether it's higher or whether it's lower than what has been suggested by officers. Obviously, if it's lower, that's very welcome. But I don't believe there's adequate time at that meeting to go through the detail and to see where the savings can be made. I would assume if a lower rate has been proposed, that there is a route to get to that rate. And, you know, I for one would like to see the detail, you know, before I would get to the meeting to be able to understand how that could be, because I think it's unfair to the public if a lower rate is possible, that we don't get an opportunity to see maybe what cuts has been suggested or what savings. So, Chair, I would like to propose that maybe officers would look at a way that this could be dealt with, maybe come back to us, that if a member has an idea of proposing a lower rate, again, which is great, that this can be fairly looked at by all members, that just can't come on the night, because I know it takes officers maybe a period of weeks to prepare the reports, and an amendment or a change at a late stage creates a massive problem. And I don't think that's just fair either on the officers. So I'd like to avoid a situation like that. That, as I say, if a party does propose a lower rate, you know, I know if it was myself, I would like to be able to explain how I've got that lower rate and give people an opportunity to vote accordingly when they have information. So I would just propose that, Chair, and say propose accepting the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to Councillor Mahan's proposal there, I think it's extremely good proposal. Nothing is as frustrating as coming on the night the rates has been struck and some party miraculously proposes a different rate then, and there's no time then for them to explain how that rate can be got to. So if there's a mechanism of getting around that and giving parties the opportunity then to, as the man says, put their money where their mouth is, wouldn't it be great that we could do that? So yes, I'm probably not putting it as subtle as Councillor Mahan, but I would be in full agreement that should be looked at. I suppose the other two things I was just wondering is, and I suppose the two workshops, maybe something could be done around them. I'm just wondering, is 2 enough? But maybe if something was worked in around what Councillor Mahan had said, maybe that would solve that. And the other one, just the online. I'm not 100% confident that the online one, just solely online, is the best way to go. I think it's hard to beat being in person at them, but I'm open to suggestions. Maybe online is what everyone wants, but personally, I think in person probably is a better option, maybe with the option to be online.
Chair, yes, just to respond to that. So certainly we're happy to look at those recommendations. There is quite a detailed engagement plan around the estimates. So as you'll be aware, there's the 2 formal workshops, but there also is a series of party briefings. So previously we've had at least one party engagement with each individual party, and sometimes numerous engagements. And in terms of, I think it is important that we consider any proposals appropriately and accurately and have time to do that, so they're fully costed and fully considered, and we're all fully aware of the impact on the rate. And I suppose in terms of timescales, certainly if those ideas and proposals could be raised at the party briefings, that will be helpful, and that will provide an opportunity for then that information to be shared at the estimates workshops. And in particular, I suppose we really probably would need about 2 weeks before the second estimates workshop to finalise through that detail. So, that would give an indication of time, which would be probably around, I suppose, the first week in January for final proposals to come in. But we can look at the detail of that and come back next month with the recommendations around that.
Yeah, I suppose that possibility would have been there every year, for us to do that. I'm just wondering, given Councillor Mahan's proposal there, is there some other way that we can, could we have almost like a trial or a shadow meeting a week before or 2 weeks before, so that we come together and it's the same as striking the rates? But if people disagree with what's on the thing, that they don't come on the night then and say, well, we could do it 2% less or 3% less, but there's no time to do it. So I'm just wondering, is there another mechanism of trying to get around that problem, because it really is becoming a consistent problem?
I think Councillor Green, first of all, I'll let Jill speak on this.
Yes, so certainly that'll be possible. The second estimates workshop is 2 weeks before the estimates meeting, and I suppose that was the thinking behind that would be really the final opportunity for those considered changes to be agreed in draft format. So those timescales would allow, so I suppose that second estimates workshop on I think it's around the 20th of January would be the opportunity to do that and to finalise the proposals.
Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Chair. We're basing a lot of these discussions on the premise that we'll get unanimity and full agreement around the rates. May not happen if we're being realistic. And if alternatives are put forward and the majority don't accept them, and yet the minority that are putting them forward feel that's the best way to go, well, you won't get unanimous agreement. Just want to put that on the table. Thank you.
Okay, no, we'll leave it at that. We're not going to prolong this out. Well, what I was going to add is, obviously, on the night that we strike the rates, it is if members want to suggest they're a different rate or is not happy, which as Councillor Irvine has said, that opportunity is obviously there on the night. I'm not going to prolong this out. We've had 2 proposals, first and seconded, and is everybody happy with them? Would you propose them? Councillor Donnelly?
Chair, I think the point is that the night for striking the rate is not the night to be coming in with saying they're going to reduce the rate to a different figure, because it can't be costed at that point. So that's not appropriate to come in with any proposal. So I would like to hope on the night of striking the rate that if someone comes in saying, oh, I want to propose 2% less or 1% less and whatever is outlined, that that's not accepted as a valid proposal, because it can't be costed. So I would like to think that if we could get to that point, that that would be made clear to anybody that would consider making a proposal like that on the night. You can't just pull figures out of the air.
Is there anyone who second Councillor Donnelly's proposal? David?
Chair, quite happy to second that, and I think really what Councillor Donnelly said is what I was trying to get at. If a member does propose a low rate, it is great if they are able to get there, but unfortunately there's no time for us to scrutinise or look at it. I can remember one in the previous mandate that I was in, a member proposed a lower rate. The chairman would allow no discussion and took a vote. I was not allowed to speak. So that's what I'm trying to avoid, Chair. If as low rates as possible, I'm all for it, Chair, but it has to be that we have a chance to study it first.
Councillor Irvine?
That's fair enough, but the thrust, I think, of this debate worries me that we're going to suppress free speech. If there are alternatives out there, they have every right, the Chamber, to come forward with them. And that's the discussion beforehand. I agree, Anne-Marie, of what you're trying to say on the night. I can't personally stand over what anybody is going to do. But if there's discussions before and there's not unanimous agreement, there will not be unanimous agreement then when the rate is brought in at the rate striking meeting. Thank you.
I'll let you in one time. Councillor, be brief.
Thanks. I think Councillor Irvine has grasped this in the wrong way. Nobody's saying that there will be total agreement. What we're saying is, if somebody has an alternative proposal, that there's a time that the staff, that the officers can price it, can come back and say what the consequences of it is, and then we are all then more educated to make a decision. Maybe, for instance, if Councillor Irvine decided that the 2% less than what was being proposed was the way to go, and he came back and gave his ideas, and the officers in that priced it and showed us what it was, maybe then we would all change our mind and back Councillor Irvine. It's that we have the time to actually see what the alternative means and give the officers and staff time to actually be able to price it. It's completely unfair to do it on the night that the rates would be struck, because that then cannot be done. And it really is they just play into the grand bandstand then at that stage.
Okay, I'm not going to prolong this. We've had the recommendations proposed and seconded. Is everybody happy with them?
Can we have some way, mechanism or a suggestion of how we could get around that problem? There has to be some way, mechanism, whether the second workshop isn't the last one. If you have proposals, bring it to the second one, and then give parties in that a week or two then to come up with alternative ones that would, but not to be pronounced on the night, so that the staff and officers has time to then to price them. That there has to be somewhere around it.
Jill?
Chair, thank you. So certainly we'll look at that. We are aware that other councils use this committee, the Policy and Resources Committee, also as a vehicle for facilitating the development of the rates. So that's a potential that in January, the Policy and Resources Committee meeting could be used as a vehicle to support that rate development process. If members are happy, we'd like to go away and I suppose look at the detail of how that would work out, and we can bring back then a proposal in November as as to how that could be facilitated, allowing full intervention from all, but ensuring that there is proper time for consideration of proposals in advance of the final meeting.
Councillor Coyle.
Well, I'd like to propose that, and that if we can discuss it, because we do need a deadline. I mean, that's what you're looking at, a deadline, like you do for everything, you know, whether it's a consultation or whatever we're doing, there's always a deadline. And, you know, we all know why people make a big scene on the night, you know, because they're hoping to make the front page of the paper, local papers. That's all it's about, because they can't make any changes. So we need a deadline for everybody. And then, just as Seamus and Anne-Marie and David have said, and I support what the director has just said there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have a proposal from Councillor Coyle that we bring this to November P&R. Is there anybody who wants to second that? Councillor Deehan.
Yeah.
Okay, everything is has been proposed and seconded. Is everybody happy now? Okay, we'll move on, and that is to the minutes of the audit panel meeting held on the 10th of September.
Chair, thank you. So to give an update on the audit panel meeting which took place, as you said, on the 10th of September, and under the terms of reference of the audit panel, the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of September are presented to this committee for adoption. So at that audit panel meeting, a number of items were considered, including the governance arrangements for the audit panel, an update on fraud and resident concerns, internal audit reports on a number of items, building control, information management, and also a review of prior period recommendations from previous audits. There was an update on the internal audit plan, and there was also an update in consideration of the annual statements accounts for the year ending 31st of March and the annual governance statement, which has now been approved and which Catherine reported on earlier. The draft report to those charged with governance and also the schedule of the audit panel meetings up to next September. So it is recommended that the Council adopts the minutes of the audit panel meeting held on the 10th of September.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, as the chair, I think it's my prerogative to propose them. Yeah, and just a query. We have lost a member now. I'm sure there'll be a new member in situ by the 10th of December, because numbers does be very tight, and there's no point in gathering everyone together if we end up without a quorum.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Yes, a nomination for the replacement member from the Ulster Unionist Party is awaited for the audit panel.
Can I have a seconder for the report on the audit panel, please? Councillor Mahan, thank you. It has to be somebody that was there. Okay, thank you. Barry?
I'm glad the matter's dispensed with, but it's a related point. It's about the replacement of a councillor. I just thought it might be useful to raise it now. I was at a meeting of Fermanagh Lakeland Tourism today. I think Garvin McPhillips has resigned from, the body, the board. So again, just to express the thanks to Garvin, of course, but the will of the board of the FLT is that Garvin should be replaced as soon as possible, to facilitate that person's attendance maybe at the next meeting in November, early November. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. We'll look into that, Councillor Michael Duff, and we'll chase that up. Okay, everybody happy with the last proposal of the audit panel? We'll move on. Next is item 4.4, and that is procurement and tenders, and it's over to Catherine again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members, this report then includes details of contracts to be awarded, contract extension and tenders to be issued, and then for noting members, details of tenders awarded under delegated authority and the use of procurement frameworks. So the first two tenders, members, council powers have been conferred to this committee to deal with those tenders. The first one is the festive lights installation, and the second one then is to deal with the Fermanagh Over Omagh Poverty Support Programme. There are three other tenders there, members, listed on pages 2 and 3. There's 4 tenders there of the report, which require committee approval, and then noting the extension of the contract for software for the leisure centres, a number of tenders to be issued, and then the single tender action in relation to the gas tank supplies at Omagh Leisure Centre, and then in the normal course of events, members, the tenders that have been awarded by the council, and you'll note in 3.2 the use of 2 frameworks. Subject to any queries, members, the detailed list of recommendations are at section 9.1 of the report for approval and 9.2 for noting. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McElduff.
Chair, thank you. It's a kind of a basic question. Whenever you say that the council's poverty support programme has been tendered for and, is being awarded, the person that wins that award or the group that wins that award, what exactly do they do to implement a poverty support programme? What's the job description? Thank you.
Pass over to Jill to answer that question.
Chair, yes, we'll come back to you with the detail of that, what was included in the tender. Certainly, yes, there are a number of items, but we'll provide an update on that from Community and Wellbeing.
Do you want to propose the recommendations, Barney? Okay, thank you. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you.
For noting, yeah.
Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 5.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Didn't see your hand there. Go ahead, Councillor Robbins.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, and I only put it up there just before you started to speak. Catherine, thanks very much for the report. It's more a query at this stage, and I suppose, first of all, thanks for the information that's now available on decision time, the confidential information. So obviously we'll not comment on it, but it's useful to see that in terms of other areas of expenditure that the council's committing to. But whenever I look at that, Catherine, and I suppose only because it's topical, it's this issue of the strategic communications piece, it would be useful, Catherine, to know what is the threshold or the baseline in which a tender such as that is considered either confidential and therefore uploaded internally, or whether it appears on the likes of the report that we've just approved there this evening. Because whenever I look at some of the other documents and some of the other funding streams within that, I do struggle sometimes to see exactly what the distinction is. And whilst I appreciate some businesses will come out and say, well, this information is commercially sensitive, lots of businesses will say that about lots of things. And I mean, just because a company will say it's commercially sensitive doesn't always necessarily mean that it is. So it would just be useful, Chair, just to understand the distinction between why some information has been uploaded and kept confidential, and how or on what basis that's been kept confidential, and why then other information such as this evening's report can be made available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member. So the procurement report covers all public tenders, and the procurement policy then sits behind that. So linked to that, the reporting mechanism through to the Policy and Resources Committee is to detail the assessment scores for each individual tender, and to detail the detail of the amount of the award of the contract. Within the confidential information is the detail of all prices submitted for all the different tenders, and you'll be aware from some of the information that some don't achieve the full score, etc., and there are different permutations around and reasons and rationale for that. Confidential information then specific in relation to tenders. So where it may be potential to actually work out a unit rate. That information is deemed commercially sensitive, and therefore that information sits on the confidential section of the tender information for members on decision time and is not reported to council in the public meeting.
Okay, Councillor Robbins. Okay, we will move on to item 5, which is the Rural Affairs Subcommittee Digital Connectivity, paper E.
Chair, thank you. This is, I suppose, a procedural update arising from the Rural Affairs Subcommittee. So the Rural Affairs Subcommittee met last week on the 3rd of October, and one of the items on the agenda was in relation to an update on Project Gigabit in relation to digital connectivity in the region. And in terms of background, there were a number of concerns with the current proposals in relation to Project Gigabit in terms of the impact to the region. So the Rural Affairs Subcommittee wished to seek an immediate meeting with DFE officials regarding the arrangements being progressed in relation to that particular project, with a view that once that meeting was progressed and the information was sought, that there would be fuller consideration at the Rural Affairs Subcommittee in relation to the particular challenges identified with that project. And so the recommendation is really procedural here for the Policy and Resources Committee, that there is approval to seek an immediate meeting with DFE officials regarding the project and to progress those arrangements in advance of ratification by the Council.
Okay. Can I have a proposer, please, on those recommendations? Councillor Deacon, seconded by Councillor Green. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, which is correspondence. The first item is correspondence from the Department of Finance regarding a summary report on revenue raising consultations.
Yes, Chair. So this was a correspondence that came into ourselves in terms of the summary report from the revenue raising consultations, which members may be aware were brought through the Policy and Resources Committee 9 to 12 months ago in relation to a variety of interventions and proposals, a suite of those, and we responded individually to all those consultations. And this is a summary report of all those consultation responses. It doesn't contain any recommendations, but an analysis of what has come through. And that's the recommendation, that's for noting this correspondence.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Chair. Happy to propose to note the correspondence. And I suppose just to say as well, to put a bit of context, we can remember when this consultation came forward, Stormont wasn't up and running, and it was nearly a political stunt, actually, by Chris Heaton-Harris as an attempt to nearly force the executive back into existence. So the whole consultation was flawed from the beginning, in my opinion. We're in a different time now. Stormont's back, and the Finance Minister will be looking at all these different issues when it comes to rates and revenue raising and different things. And some interesting proposals in this consultation, and we'll see what the Minister will come back with. And Sinn Féin has been on record in the past in saying that we believe that the 400k maximum capital value should be scrapped. So we'll hopefully see that in the time ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder to the note of that, please? Councillor Coyle. Thank you. Everybody happy? We'll move on to the next item, which is 6.2, is no correspondence dated the 23rd of September from ICBAN.
Chair, thank you. Yes, this is a correspondence that has come in from ICBAN in relation to a capacity building programme for members of the ICBAN board, and the correspondence notes that since the local government elections, there has been a significant turnover of staff members on the ICBAN board. So it's a proposal for a 3-part capacity building training programme. One, which is standalone training elements. The second element, which is a study visit to the border region of Scotland and England. And the third element is to work on a joint forum with other cross-border partnerships the Northwest Border Partnership and the East Border Region. And the specific ask within this correspondence is that approval is granted for funding from the Council for the study visit to the Scottish Border Region. The visit will be for a period of 3 days, including 2 overnight stays, and the visit will involve travel, ferry crossing, hotel accommodation and subsistence costs for members of the ICBAN board. The council has 4 members on the ICBAN board, so Councillor McCann, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Rainey and Councillor Robinson. And the anticipated costs are approximately £800 for each member attending.
Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to propose that we support what's in the letter and let the councillors go along for the training.
Okay. Can anybody wants to second that? Councillor Donnelly, I see you first. Okay, thank you. Everybody happy? Okay, move on to item 6.3, and that's to note correspondence dated the 3rd of October from the Department of Communities.
Yes, Chair. So this is a correspondence that has come in on a piece of work that has been carried out over a significant period of time in terms of review of the reform of local government and the impact of that reform in terms of service delivery and cost effectiveness. So within the executive summary, a number of improvements have been identified in relation to service delivery, in terms of collaboration, in terms of improved local economic development around community engagement, social inclusion, some positive impacts around environmental sustainability and improved governance and decision making. And the report also notes the challenges in terms of the implementation of the review of local government coming through, and also an indication in terms of the costs and the outworkings of that in terms of increasing costs, but also noting that there is significant additional functions which have been taken on by local government, by local councils, as well as significant investment in capital programmes. So additional functionality such as the planning function, off-street parking, local economic development, local tourism, which is impactful, and then new functions which have been come on board as accordance with that review, community planning and performance improvement. So the recommendation is that we would note this correspondence from the Department of the Communities. Councillor Green.
Yeah, just a question. It's something that I often wonder what the answer to it was, and maybe this would be an opportunity to ask the Department of Communities if indeed it's them that's the who's over this type of thing. Why is the local government elections in the north every 4 years, where European elections, Westminster elections, Stormont elections, Dáil elections, elections to councils in the south are all 5 years, bar the local government elections? Surely that would be a cost saving to put them 5 years the same and align them with every other election. So it's just something I often wondered about, and I don't know whether anyone knows that answer or not. And maybe if we don't, could we write to the department and ask them what is the logic to it?
Maybe they think having us for 4 years is enough. Councillor Irvine.
I think Seamus has a fair point there, I must admit. It is right. Why should we be the odd ones out and have to do it? Now, a couple of things, observations, and probably a question. Catherine, I see you were on the panel. Yep. Is it going to reconvene again, or is this it? That's the first question.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the panel, and my understanding was to agree to a point of publication at this stage. I suppose the report notes that it's too early to actually give a full picture. And I suppose members will notice well that this really focuses on local government in relation to the amalgamations and doesn't focus on central government. I think that point was brought back through to the panel. So I suppose my role was to represent, with two other colleagues, the NI councils in its totality, the 11, just maybe feeding through information, etc. So at this point in time, that has now stood down. But I would suggest there'll be further engagement. Council officers work through with the finance working group, of which this will be part of the agenda at our next meeting. So I can certainly ask at what stage or what step will the next review take place.
The next, I think, is an observation. Maybe if you're an ongoing member, you could maybe put it back to the panel, to DFC. The originator, basically, I suppose, of the thrust for carrying out reform was something that came from Stormont, but it was on the back of a commissioned report by, I believe, PwC. And that was a report that was widely circulated, I think, in late 2013, 2014, prior to legislation being enacted in 2014 to establish the new councils in 2015. And they actually quoted substantially greater fiscal savings. I'm not talking about HR savings and efficiency of service delivery. I'm talking about actual real money savings. And in this, I see figures quoted, but I'm not sure if they're baselined or benchmarked against anything that was there before. And I think that's a deficit in the report and is probably a mismanagement or a misstatement, because there was and there were figures out there, basically, and a lot of those figures were used as the basis for carrying through the reform, particularly on the 11 council model. And it was predicated that over the lifetime, I think, span of 20 or 25 years, that somewhere in the region of 750 million real-time cost savings would be achieved by this redistribution and re-administration. To date, I see nothing referring back to that. And all I see coming through from the Department of the Communities is essentially trying to look at what's happened in regard to the councils and how well they're getting on. There is no benchmarking back. And I would like an answer basically going back in that regard. Why is that not being done? It should be done. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to propose? No,
I propose that, yes.
Okay. Councillor Ovens.
Thank you, Chair, and it's very much following this similar vein as what Councillor Irvine talked about there. I mean, Chair, whenever I looked at this report, you know, I actually consider this report quite an indictment, actually, and quite a scathing overview of where exactly we are in terms of the reform of local government. And it, again, it's following the similar comments made by Robert. I mean, one particular report was that PwC economic appraisal, and it had a figure, and I'm just after looking it up again, it had a figure of £438 million of savings in 25 years. But yet I read this report and I see a figure, and albeit this is only the first reports out of date, it seems most of it was written a couple of years ago, but in the first 8 years we saved, or the first 8 years we saved not even 21.5 million. And arguably the greatest savings were going to be made in those first years as services were brought in-house, as greater efficiencies were going to be rolled out. So I actually consider this report quite a scathing assessment of local government reform. I mean, one of its findings, or one of its conclusions, is it's found a key finding of improved service delivery. Now, perhaps with the exception of planning, anyone that I talk to about this, very few people, put it this way, very few people tell me that the reform of local government or the merger of Fermanagh Council, the old legacy Fermanagh Council and Omagh, has been anything other. Well, it hasn't been a success, to put it politely that way. I don't see the benefit. I don't see the reforms. There were lots of promises made. 10 years ago, at the time of the local government bill was going through the Assembly, lots of those promises haven't been delivered upon. Lots of the efficiencies, as I say, haven't been delivered. I don't see improved service delivery, and I will only use this as one anecdote. But this week, the most basic thing, and I've said in the chamber before, Chair, the most basic thing a council should be responsible for is emptying bins and opening toilets. I mean, bins this week, my brown bin wasn't lifted. The advice is to go to my local recycling centre. It's meant to be open today, or it was meant to be open today. It wasn't. It was closed. I see just another email there this evening that Cannolly's closed tomorrow. So, Chair, I struggle with the assertion that the reform of local government has delivered improved service delivery, because certainly I don't see it. Thank you.
Councillor Roth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to second Councillor Green's proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Coyle.
Thanks, Chair, and yeah, I'd support it as well. But I just want to add, I don't know. We've been through, since we've been one big Fermanagh and Omagh Council, we went through a really hard time, and I just wanted to, I suppose, comment some of the more positive things that the council done. We went through COVID, and I have to say, as a community activist, if it wasn't for the funding that the council were giving communities across Fermanagh and Omagh district on the ground, delivering to people literally to their front doors, that we were able to do, and to all the different sports groups, community groups, art groups. There is so much that the council do give and does get out to communities that I just wanted to make that comment, because I'm just basically sick of listening to negativity every single month. There's a lot of good. You've only got to go through some of the accounts that we're looking at, as well as our parks and all those things. But actually, in the last few years, the very difficult period that I wasn't on the council during COVID, but I was working out in the community, and a lot of our funding came from the council, and it went straight to people's front doors in all different ways. And a lot of good work was done, and it's continuing today. So just wanted to make that point.
Councillor Ruth.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies for the late arrival, just stuck at work. But just to kind of go back on some of the numbers, I think it was 21 million over the first 8 years that Councillor Ovens had said. I don't think anybody here was expecting the number that PwC initially arrived at, but I would suggest that perhaps it's actually the opposite of what Councillor Ovens says, in that I would expect most of the savings really to be coming towards the end of that 25-year period, as the cumulative total of the reform starts to add up. I dare say that even 8 years in, there's still some of the reforms that were suggested haven't taken place, and there is still duplication in this council and other councils. So, I mean, whilst it's a slow start, there's no doubt about it, and overall, we would still probably argue to this day what the viability or the value there was in reducing the councils to 11. But I think if it's a 25-year saving we're looking at, 8 years in is a bit early, and if anything, those savings would be more likely to come later on with cumulative totals as they add up. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, both of those items have been proposed and second. Is everybody happy? Take silence as yes. Other correspondence, 6.4.
Yes, Chair, thank you. So this is a correspondence that's come in from the General Register Office in relation to the existing legislation which was put in place through the Coronavirus Act for registration of deaths and stillbirths, and the powers facilitate the remote registration of deaths and stillbirth and the electronic exchange of documents. So it was brought in as part of COVID regulations and has been extended a number of times. And the communication is that these powers would be extended further until on the 24th of March. And at that time, it is anticipated that the Assembly would consider and put in place to enable the current registration practices to continue until the permanent powers are put in place. The Council recently wrote to the General Register Office and is supportive of the current arrangements in place, and then that they greatly facilitate registration services, and they're very well received by the users of registration services. So it's to note that correspondence.
Okay, Councillor Deacon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jill, for your report. I just want to propose that the Council note this correspondence from Becky Riley, the Assistant Registrar General at the General Register Office. I'm very pleased to hear from Jill, Chair, that the Council has already responded positively in relation to these new arrangements, and certainly the letter from Becky Riley dated the 7th of October, and then the debate in the Assembly is occurring on the 14th of October. It doesn't give much time for any lobbying. However, I would be reasonably confident that the Northern Ireland Assembly would approve the extension of these temporary arrangements to enable legislation to be brought forward. Chair, these new arrangements which were brought in with coronavirus are working extremely well. It's a streamlined process whereby documentation can be transferred electronically with great speed and efficiency, and causing a lot less distress for bereaved relatives. So I hope that we will that the Assembly will vote positively on Monday regarding the extension of that legislation. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair, and I fully support the sentiments of Councillor Deehan. I think anything that will ease the stress and difficulty for people that are going through loss of children at this stage really should be accommodated. So I'm more than happy to second the proposing the extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ruth.
Thanks, Chair. Again, just to echo what's been said, my experience in speaking to GPs has been that they're happy with the system, and that it is quicker for them, quicker for families, and should be welcomed. And I hope that the Stormont Assembly support it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Chair. Just to agree with all the previous speakers that these changes are really welcome, particularly for grieving families, and they take an awful lot of the stress out of registering a loved one's death. So in that sense, we're glad to see another extension. But I suppose what question which I would have, this is the third extension of this. And while it's good, we want to see permanent legislation brought in at some stage, and we don't want to go down the line of just always extending temporary extensions. So maybe I could propose that we write and ask for an update on permanent legislation coming through in this regard. Because ideally we would like to avoid another 6-month extension if possible. Thanks.
Okay. Would anybody like to second that? Councillor Donnelly. So you've heard the two proposals, one that we note the correspondence, and Councillor Brown's proposal that we write to ask for an update. Everybody happy with those two proposals? Yeah, okay. That's the end of the correspondence. We'll move on to any urgent or relevant business. When we go into this, we only are basically hearing from the member who has the issue and any proposals that they have. There is going to be no debates or whatever on it. So the first person up is Councillor Michael Duff.
Thanks for hearing this item. I'm proposing that the council write a letter to DFA Roads on a specific issue in Omagh. At the beginning of November, think it's the 4th of November, there's going to be phase 1 of necessary roadworks in the Dromore Road area of Omagh. But it's going to impact significantly on businesses, for a period. So I understand there's a meeting between a large number of businesses in the Dromore Road today with DFA Roads, large retailers, other hospitality providers, for example. And essentially what they are asking for is that in phase 1 of the upcoming roadworks, that the work would be commenced nightly at 10 p.m. instead of the pre-planned 8 p.m. And the businesses came together because they're able to calculate in phase 1 how much impact this would have on the businesses in terms of lost income, lost revenue, and the impact it would have on 100 evening staff, people, having reduced or no hours for that particular week. So I don't think DFA Roads are digging their heels in. I think there's a spirit of compromise, but it'd be useful if this council would write to DFA Roads and support the businesses in the Dromore Road area of Omagh to ensure that disruption is minimised. And I'm talking about phase 1 of 3 phases of improvements that are going to take place in that area. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Mahan, are you coming in to second that? Okay, happy enough to second that. Okay, I will let you in on yours as well. Again, same applies. Just come out with a recommendation and no discussion on it.
Thank you, Chair, and yes, quite happy to second Councillor McIlduff's proposal. As members will be aware, Chair, in 2018, the Enniskillen Ladies Hockey Club had to stop using the pitch at the Bonacre in Irvinstown, AstroTurf pitch, as it became unsafe to play on. At the time, then, the new Devonish College was in the planning, and there was proposals there to create a suitable pitch at that site. And the council decided then, as far as I remember, not to go ahead with resurfacing the Bonacre pitch at that time, as there would be one delivered at the Devonish College. Much time has passed, and I understand that it is unlikely now that there will be a pitch at the Devonish College. And if this is the case, I would think the responsibility now would come back to the council to deliver and repair the pitch at the Bonacre. With that in mind, Chair, I would propose 3 things. That an updated position would be would be requested from the Department of Education to confirm whether or not a pitch is going to be done at the Devonish. Secondly, if not, that a report be brought back to next month's meeting with the costs associated to repair the pitch at the Bonacre. And thirdly, and lastly, that the potential costs for this would be included within the rates process coming forward this year. As I understand, Fermanagh is the only council around the area with no pitch for the ladies hockey to play on, which I think is unfair. And this is their 50th year anniversary, and it would be great to get them back on their own pitch. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the 3 proposals from Councillor Mahan. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Coyle. I think the pitch obviously has been, certainly from my time at council, it's something that has been debated quite a bit, and certainly the hockey team deserve it.
Chair, no, certainly happy to look at that. And just to advise, I suppose the most appropriate committee that would come through would be the, Regeneration and Community Committee. And though that could be worked through in terms of broad caustics for next month, that could be quite tight. I'm not sure, but certainly we'll endeavour to do it as quickly as we can. And I'd speak to the director there in terms of what can be brought forward. But, very happy to look at that proposal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You've heard that proposed and seconded. Everybody happy? Okay, that's the end of the urgent relevant business and open meeting. We're now going to go into confidential. So could I have a proposer, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Irvine. Donnelly, you can give me the thumbs up when you're ready. Donald, whenever you're, give us a thumbs up. Okay, thank you for that. I'll now ask Jill to sum up what was discussed in confidential.
Chair, thank you. While in confidential, the committee considered the confidential report on staffing matters and noted a number of items, and also considered an item of urgent and relevant business raised by a member.
Okay, thank you everybody for participating in tonight's meeting. We've actually come to the end quite swiftly tonight, so wish everybody a safe journey home, and all being well, we'll see you at this one next month again. Thank you.